Hi, I'm Nick, and welcome to Art Explained. Perhaps we better start from the beginning. But before we begin, we shouldn't underestimate the anthropological importance about what we are going to talk about. Behavioral modernity is which trait in behavior separates Homo sapiens from the rest of hominins and primates. So quite literally, we are talking about what separates man from apes. Not thumbs, but the ability to have abstract thought. A sidebar, all this art will be taking place in caves. If you've never been spelunking or exploring in a cave, you're really missing out. It all started with a dog named Robot. Robot and his owner were hiking down when Robot fell down a cave, and his owner, Marcel, he discovered these magnificent paintings on the walls of hands and animals. He knew what he had found was special. After talking to his teacher about it the next day, he camped out for 3 days so that no one would disturb the cave until the proper authorities arrived. The cave they found became known as Lascaux Cave in Mammoth, France, and the paintings are from 17,000 to 15,000 BCE. However, these are not the oldest. That title belongs to a cave in Iberia whose paintings are 64,000 years old and thus done by Neanderthals. The first thing that Marcel and company would have come across is a wall of hands. These are hands of people that used the cave. The hands would have been outstretched and pigment would have been blown through a bone. This would have left a relief of a hand. There are several thoughts why this was significant. For one, it's a sign that they were there at the time. Another is that the cave is now at least partially belonged to them. One theory is that it's a rite of passage. There are smaller hand markings to back this up. The third theory is that there were handprints deep inside the cave so that an oracle or a shaman would complete rituals with handprints. The hands could be used for some sort of sympathetic magic. Let me explain. On the cave walls were covered with pictures of cattle, bison, felines, a bird, bear, and a rhinoceros. Hundreds of different animals. None of those were reindeer, which were the primary source of food. All of the bones, which were found with pigment in them, were reindeer bones. The leading theory is that by capturing the animal's likeness and pigment, the animal could be caught and used for food. Sympathetic magic. In addition, the drawings containing humanoids, abstract signs, and shapes. The caves reproduce now 3 times because of the CO2 emissions from the guest's breath and because of graffiti. Just because we talked about a cave in Europe does not mean they don't exist worldwide. For example, the Khoit Tuskahar Cave in Mongolia, the Blombos Cave in South Africa, and the Hook Islands in Australia, and many, many more contain sites just like this. Next, we are going to take a limestone figurine. The Venus of Willendorf is so named because of the goddess Venus and the discovery in the town of Willendorf. It was made between 28,000 and 25,000 BCE and stands at 4.5 inches high. There are many Venus statues made during this time. My personal favorite is the Venus of Dolny because it is the first example of unfired clay, but the Venus of Willendorf was the first to be discovered, so let's talk about it. The purpose of the Venus statues is unknown. The leading theory is that the figures were fertility goddesses determined by the large hips and breasts. We do not know what is covering her face. My guess is some sort of hat, but that's probably wrong. Another theory is that was brought to my attention is that the Venuses were self-portraits of the artist, and that's why the head is so disproportionate. If we look down at the figurine, some of the enlarged features begin to make sense. Our next piece is zoomorphic in nature. That means it's a combination of 2 or more animals. So to find it is a hop, skip, and a jump to Holstedstadel, I butchered that, in Germany, where there stands a foot-tall mammoth ivory figure. This figure may be the oldest statuette as it is 30,000 BCE. The figure is of the body of a human and the head of a feline. What perplexes scholars the most is that similar ideas can be found in Mesopotamia and Egypt, but not Europe. One possible explanation is Paleolithic sorcerers and wizards would wear the heads of animals, and this figurine was based off of that. In any case, it was extremely difficult and time-consuming process to pull off. The ivory needed to be broken from the mammoth and then shaped with sandstone. Finally, the carver would have to etch in the limbs and heads, requiring at least several days of intense craftsmanship. This was no easy task and would either be a highly treasured possession or it would cost a fortune to trade for. Next time on Art Explained, we're going to talk about modern art, how it might not mean what you think it means. If you could like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. And then also, I've added a Patreon down in the description if you're feeling generous and wanted to donate to the tip jar.